the war Enterprise was building toward, and the biggest event you never saw. A desperate, brutal conflict fought in the dark against an enemy no human had ever seen. Join us as we explore the shock offensive through to the pivotal Battle of Cheron, and how Captain Archer's leadership laid the foundation for the Federation itself. Hey everyone, it's David from Sci-Finatics, and today we're going to be covering the first of 3 videos we have exploring aspects of Star Trek Enterprise. Given fan interest in the concept of a Star Trek United series, we thought we'd take a look back at key parts of Star Trek Enterprise and see how these could play into this future series that writer-producer Mike Sussman's pitching. In this first video, we're going to focus on the Romulan War. We all know that the war would have been explored in later seasons of Enterprise, had it continued its run of course. This is an area of the franchise that has limited canonical exposure, yet it's a very popular theme with many fans who'd love to see it explored. Enterprise built towards it, Star Trek United might look back at it, but today we're going to explore it. We'll cover its causes, the prelude to war, how it unfolded, its ending, and what came and what might still come after this pivotal unseen conflict. So, let's crack into it. To kick things off, let's take a look back at our first insights into the war from the original series episode Balance of Terror. Now, if you're interested in a deep dive on this episode, then check out our earlier video on this classic story. Balance of Terror serves as the pivotal moment where the Federation first encounters the Romulan Star Empire since the war's conclusion a century ago. The plot is a tense cat-and-mouse space battle, much like a submarine thriller, as the USS Enterprise attempts to stop a Romulan vessel that has systematically destroyed Earth outposts near the Romulan neutral zone. The conflict in Balance of Terror is a direct result of the peace treaty that ended the Earth-Romulan War, spanning from 2156 to 2160. The episode establishes 3 critical historical facts about the war that shaped the present crisis. First, the establishment of the Romulan neutral zone, a buffer area created by treaty with the agreement that any vessel crossing into it constitutes an act of war. Second, the war was fought with what Starfleet now considers primitive atomic weapons and lacked visual communications, meaning no human ever got to see a Romulan. And third, the Romulan commander's appearance is shockingly Vulcan-like, revealing a shared ancestry that incites prejudice from crewman Lieutenant Styles, whose family died back in the earlier war. The immediate threat of the Romulan ship, combined with the act of crossing the neutral zone, carries the historical weight that Kirk's actions could instantly reignite this devastating war that had been held in check for over a century. Moving forward a little to the TNG era now, we get a snippet about the Romulan War in the episode The Defector, when Jarok, the namesake of the episode, mentions the Battle of Cheron, being a humiliating defeat that wasn't forgotten by the Romulans. Our next canonical source, however, on the Romulan War comes from Star Trek Enterprise, which set the stage for the conflict. However, it was specifically a background computer screen graphic in the episode In a Mirror Darkly Part 2 that provided the first firm dates and context. This historical archive entry stated the Romulan War started in 2156 and ended with the decisive Battle of Cheron in 2160. Won by a human, Vulcan, Andorian Tellarite alliance, which is the only canonical evidence that these founding Federation races fought the Romulans together. The Enterprise Season 2 episode Minefield serves as Starfleet's earliest direct canonical contact with the Romulan Star Empire back in 2152, which foreshadows the devastating war to come. The crisis begins with the NX-01 straying into a newly deployed uncharted Romulan minefield, demonstrating their highly effective and early use of cloaking technology. The Romulan commanders' cold indifference to the loss of a single Starfleet life, in this case Malcolm's, when he gets his leg impaled by a mine securing itself to the Enterprise's hull, underscores their rigid, territorial and ruthless military doctrine. Crucially, the Romulan crew's absolute refusal to engage in a dialogue and the complete lack of visual contact serve as a chilling precursor to the faceless nature of the Earth-Romulan War, solidifying the Romulans as a technologically formidable and hostile foe. Moving forward to Enterprise Season 4 now, we get the 3-part Vulcan arc set in 2154, comprising the episodes The Forge, Awakening and Kishara, depicting a political crisis on Vulcan that ultimately sets the stage for the Earth-Romulan War. An investigation reveals that the Earth embassy bombing on Vulcan was orchestrated by the head of the Vulcan High Command, the particularly emotional Vulcan, Administrator Valas, as part of a conspiracy to justify the eradication of the pacifist Cyranites, while steering Vulcan to launch a preemptive invasion of Andoria under false pretenses. T'Pau, the Cyranite leader, T'Pol, and Captain Archer expose the conspiracy within the High Command, simultaneously halting the Vulcan attack fleet and leading to the dissolution of the corrupt Vulcan government. The political upheaval on Vulcan, by dissolving the conservative High Command, removed the final barrier preventing Earth, Andoria and Tella from fully uniting into the coalition coalition of planets, thus moving the Alpha Quadrant a step closer to conflict with Romulus. The arc provides the crucial insight that the entire crisis was a meticulously planned Romulan operation, the Romulan Star Empire instigating the conflict by using misinformation and operating through a highly placed proxy agent, Administrator Velas. This is confirmed in the final moments of Kishara, where Velas meets with his handler, revealed to be the Romulan agent Major Talok. Talok's role as an unseen mastermind illustrates the signature Romulan strategy of the era, never fighting directly when subterfuge and manipulation will suffice. His ultimate goal of reunification shows the Romulans' ambition to consolidate the Vulcan people and remove any major political opposition before initiating a full-scale conflict with the coalition of planets. We then move on to the three-part drone ship arc, also set in 2154, comprising the episodes Babel 1, United, and the Enar, which involves a covert Romulan operation designed to shatter the fragile peace between the major powers. The crisis began with attacks on Andorian and Tellarite ships by a single Romulan drone vessel, using holographic projection technology to mimic other species' spacecraft and simulate their weapons, thereby creating paranoia and escalating hostilities. Captain Archer successfully averted a formal war by preventing a duel between Commander Chiron and Ambassador Grull, uniting the Andorians and the Tellarites against the unknown aggressor. The final phase revealed that the drone ship was remotely controlled via telepresence by a kidnapped Enar named Gerib, who belonged to this blind telepathic subspecies of the Andorians. The technological advantage of the Romulans was the core of their offensive. Their drone ships, being of a modified warbird design, were controlled remotely from Romulus, allowing them to project power across vast distances while remaining safe by exploiting a powerful telepath to operate the highly complex drone vessels themselves. The entire operation was a masterclass in covert, detached and ruthless warfare, setting the tone for the Earth-Romulan War. The Romulan Star Empire's primary objective in this operation was essentially regional destabilisation, not aiming for a conventional war, but to prevent the formation of a united power bloc that would ultimately become the future Federation by exploiting existing tensions. This ensured the Romulan Star Empire remained an anonymous and technologically mysterious threat, completely detached from the bloodshed they caused. Now we reach the Romulan War itself. There's limited canonical information on this brutal conflict, but a number of semi- or non-canonical sources give some insights, albeit conflicting narratives, on how this war could have played out. For the purposes of this video though, in addition to the canonical episodes that refer to the conflict, I'm going to steer through a rather speculative course of events, drawing from sources like the Star Trek Federation, the First 150 Years reference book, and the Enterprise pocket novels Beneath the Raptor's Wing and To Brave the Storm by Michael A. Martin. So the Earth-Romulan War began in 2156 and likely commenced with a devastating Decisive Romulan Pearl Harbor style of surprise attack. The attack could have targeted a critical fort facility such as Starbase 1, as detailed in the Federation the First 150 Years. This initial calculated blow immediately established the core Romulan strategic pattern, using their technological mastery of rudimentary cloaking technology to execute brutal ambush tactics. Their goal was to systematically choke the Earth's supply lines by hitting key resource outposts, mining facilities, and shipping routes right across Starfleet's operational space. While Data points out in the TNG episode The Defector that the Romulans rarely strike first, preferring to test an enemy's resolve, it's certainly feasible that they may have taken preemptive action if the circumstances were in their favour. This calculated treachery, combined with Romulus's subsequent silence, likely eliminated any efforts to find a diplomatic solution, compelling Earth to formally declare war on Romulus. The shock of the initial attack and the offensive that followed was amplified by the effect of Romulan cloaking technology, which allowed the enemy to essentially strike with impunity, unseen from anywhere and any time, creating a climate of fear, especially in the more remote areas of Earth's control. The seemingly invisible Romulan vessels created a psychological terror that severely hindered early Starfleet tactical responses and forced them into a purely reactive defensive posture. Furthermore, when visual inter-ship communication was readily available to both sides, the Romulans deliberately refused to use it, acting as an additional psychological lever and reinforcing the image of a ruthless, faceless enemy. These challenges compelled Starfleet to essentially accelerate starship production and prioritise research into more advanced sensors and detection systems, beginning the long, hard fight towards technological parity with their Romulan foes. As the war entered its second year in 2157, the conflict grew significantly, with a declaration of support from Earth's key allies. However, the nascent coalition didn't immediately deploy its full collective military might. The decision was largely strategic and geographical, given essentially the proximity of their core systems to known or suspected Romulan operating areas. Both the Andorians and the Tellarites initially adopted a heavily self-defensive posture. Their primary focus was on fortifying and securing Andoria and Teller Prime, making them more hesitant to commit significant forces to large-scale offensive operations alongside United Earth. This cautious approach was compounded by the restrained position of the Vulcan leadership, which offered only limited defensive aid. Their reservations in getting involved may have been based in a secret suspicion that the Romulans were their aggressive, long-lost brethren, a revelation they believed could fracture the alliance. With the Allied participation curtailed, United Earth Starfleet was largely shouldering the burden of the expanding conflict, which developed into a grueling defensive war of attrition. The tactically superior Romulans continued to rely heavily on their technological advantage, essentially using earlier versions of the cloaking devices that we saw in the original series, to execute devastating surprise ambushes against supply lines, resource outposts, and thinly spread patrol routes. However, it could be around this time that Starfleet was starting to deploy some limited countermeasures that would be able to detect nearby Romulan vessels, giving them some ability to react and fight back. In this primarily spacebound conflict, it's reasonable to assume that no quarter was given, nor was it expected, seeing no prisoners being taken or exchanged between both combatants. Starfleet's primary successes during this phase lay not in major offensive gains, more in the sustained ability to hold the line in critical sectors. While coalition forces managed to score minor, localised defensive victories, there were no major breakthroughs or strategic reversals in 2157 that fundamentally altered the defensive and reactive nature of the war. Facing resilient if hard-pressed coalition defence, the Romulans escalated their brutality in a desperate attempt to break human resolve. Their forces could have conducted devastating orbital strikes on large populated United Earth and neutral colonies, resulting in the death of millions of civilians. This calculated act of terror, intended to shatter the coalition spirit, achieved the opposite effect. The sheer scale of the atrocities hardened the political and military resolve of the growing alliance, galvanising their collective commitment to total victory against the Romulan Star Empire. The war reached its terrifying and defining peak in 2158, with the Romulan leadership deciding to strike at the heart of the enemy, Earth itself. A massive Romulan fleet successfully executed sophisticated flanking manoeuvres, bypassing the innermost defence installations near Pluto and Neptune to reach the Terran system. This direct assault on Earth and its surrounding colonies, known as the Battle of Sol, was intended to deliver a final knockout blow to Starfleet's ability to wage war. The attack culminated in the strategic destruction of vital starship production facilities, including the Utopia Planitia fleet yards at Mars and Jupiter Station, stretching Starfleet's resources to absolute breaking point. The Romulan strategy in 2158 wasn't just limited to Earth. Concurrent with the Battle of Sol, a major Romulan force launched a surprise attack on the Denobulan system. Denobula had maintained a policy of careful neutrality, but the Romulans sought to prevent any future alignment with the Coalition by crippling their infrastructure and creating chaos. This brutal assault, however, achieved the reverse of its intended goal. It enraged the Denobulan people, leading them to abandon their neutrality and dedicate their full resources and support to the Coalition's war effort. During the Battle of Sol, the Starship Enterprise NX-01 under Captain Jonathan Archer was instrumental in defending the core system, often leading to the most desperate high-risk counter-missions against the invasion fleet. This deep involvement in such a critical moment of the war could have earned Archer awards such as the Starfleet Medal of Valor with clusters or the Star Cross, inferred by background display graphics in the Enterprise episode Through the Mirror Darkly. This battle might also be the pivotal Romulan War flashback event that Mike Sussman was referring to when introducing a significant new character to his Star Trek United series. The final desperate confrontation saw Starfleet successfully defend Earth, preventing the planet's annihilation. This defence, though immensely costly and a profound shock to humanity, especially if planetary bombardment had occurred, as inferred by Captain Sisko's comments in DS9's Homefront, ultimately marked the decisive strategic turning point of the entire conflict, proving the Romulans were not invincible. With the existential threat to Earth neutralised, the coalition of planets immediately seized the strategic initiative in 2159 and launched the decisive coalition counteroffensive. The nature of the conflict transformed once more, moving from defence to a bloody, grinding war of attrition fought over vital systems on the fringes of Romulan claimed space. culminating in the Coalition targeting the heavily defended Chiron system, which Romulan forces were using as a staging ground for a possible second strike on Earth. As frontline weapon stocks depleted with the intense fighting, both sides experiencing warfare regression strive for simplified mass-produced armaments, leading to a reliance on crude and primitive atomic weapons as noted in the original series' Balance of Terror episode. The war reached its inevitable conclusion in 2160 at the Battle of Cheron, the same planet as shown in the TOS episode Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. Coalition command won through strategic brilliance, executing a massive tactical feint attack directly toward Romulus itself. This daring sacrificial gambit was spearheaded by Starfleet vessels and the newly committed Denobulan fleet. This combination of forces, which the Romulans didn't expect in their core system, successfully drew off their primary defensive fleet, leaving the true target, the Chiron shipyards, critically vulnerable for the subsequent invasion. The remaining Coalition forces, comprising the human, Vulcan, Andorian and Tellarite fleets, then focused their full, unified might on the heavily defended primary Romulan shipyards located in the Chiron system. The resulting engagement delivered a crippling decisive blow to the Romulan military, resulting in the loss of their primary strategic reserve and forcing their immediate and unconditional surrender. However, the Coalition was too exhausted by the war's extensive cost to launch an occupational force. This exhaustion made the decision to abstain from an invasion a wise one, particularly since putting Coalition boots on the ground could have triggered the costly and previously unused deployment of Riemann shock troops, raising the price of complete victory to an unacceptable level. With the fighting over, the focus immediately shifted to demanding Romulus's unconditional surrender and beginning the challenging process of establishing peace terms. The Earth-Romulan War ended in 2160 with the decisive Battle of Cheron. The ensuring peace treaty, established in 2161, didn't involve face-to-face negotiation. Instead, it was mediated via subspace radio, reflecting the Romulan policy of extreme secrecy and xenophobia. This treaty established the Romulan neutral zone, a massive demilitarized buffer zone intended to prevent direct conflict. The Federation side immediately constructed outpost stations on asteroids along their border of the zone, providing a first line of defense and surveillance that would last for a century. The ultimate political outcome of the Romulan War was the successful formation of the United Federation of Planets in 2161, just a year after the Battle of Cheron. The crisis orchestrated by the Romulans, which first forced the four species to cooperate and then united them against a common external enemy, provided the necessity of a true alliance. Following the war, Captain Jonathan Archer played a critical diplomatic role, leveraging his reputation as a war hero and his deep personal bonds with the Tellarite, Andorian and Vulcan people to champion and realise the unification effort. The new Federation officially superseded the informal coalition of planets and established a unified government, military in the form of an enlarged Starfleet, and charter, marking the beginning of the interstellar power that would define the Alpha and Beta quadrants for centuries to come. While the treaty with the Romulans marked the end to the shooting war, the political conflict immediately transitioned into a new covert phase. This climate of paranoia necessitated the immediate creation of new security protocols to counter the deep cover espionage and political machinations launched by the now isolated Romulan Star Empire. Characters like Major Talok could have come to personify this threat, potentially acting as, high-profile operatives of the nascent Tal Shiar. Talok's missions may have focused on sophisticated intelligence gathering and covert operations designed to sow seeds of distrust between the four founding species and test the cohesion of the fledgling Federation. This enduring challenge of internal trust and external security became a central focus of the Federation's first decades, a theme central to the Star Trek United continuity. For the Romulan Star Empire, the defeat at Cheron ushered in a long period of self-imposed isolation, lasting for nearly a century. The Empire shifted its strategy from open, if covert, warfare to deep-seated paranoia and military vigilance, perfecting their intelligence agencies like the Tal Shiar and refining advanced technology such as the cloaking device. The aftermath of the war directly established the Cold War dynamic that exists when the Romulans are first encountered again in the original series episode Balance of Terror. This enduring tension supports the interpretation that the Romulan Wars were never truly over, but simply transitioned into a Cold War. The Battle of Cheron only forced a ceasefire. It didn't resolve the ideological conflict between the xenophobic expansionist Romulan Empire and the more inclusive, exploration-focused Federation. This post-war reality meant that for 100 years, the conflict continued via surveillance, subterfuge, and political disruption. The transition from a hot war to a cold war is the perfect precarious springboard for Star Trek United. Writer-producer Mike Sussman has indicated that while the series focuses on President Archer, navigating the political world of the United Federation of Planets decades later, The shadow of the Romulan conflict is central to its first season. The devastating defeat at Chiron inflicted an unforgettable psychological and territorial wound on the Romulan Star Empire. While they respected the neutral zone, they didn't simply vanish. They shifted their military focus to conquering other areas of the galaxy instead, conducting the very campaigns the Romulan commander would later allude to in the original series episode Balance of Terror. This creates the central generational conflict of Star Trek United. One of President Archer's children serves in Federation intelligence, and the perfect narrative symmetry would be to see them countered by the adult son or daughter of a classic adversary, like Romulan Agent Talok, for instance. Season 1 of United wouldn't likely feature open warfare. It would be a political thriller where the Romulans attempt to destroy the Federation from within. This enduring challenge of internal security and external threats is what defines the Federation's first decades and could be the core of the Star Trek United story. Well folks, that concludes our deep dive into the pivotal Romulan War. I hope you enjoyed our exploration of this fascinating time period. What did you think of our speculation on the Romulan War itself? Do you have any preferred non-canonical sources that you'd like to see realised on screen in the future? What pivotal moment of the Romulan War would you like to see most explored in Star Trek United if the series gets a green light? Let's get the conversation started in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date with all of our latest videos. Until next time folks, live long and prosper and bye for now.